Hey everybody, this is us for Listed on Gaming with episode 1, match number 4 with Izzet Drakes. Just a friendly reminder, if you like what you're seeing on the channel, please consider giving us a subscribe as well as giving us a like and a comment down below. So this was the Izzet Drakes, the more controlling version of the deck from last standard season. I started messing around with at the end of the standard season or before Ravnica Allegiances came out due to unhappiness with some of the removal spells in the red version of the deck, having problems killing things like, Doom Whisperer, Wild Growth Walkers that grow to be too big, some of the new angels that were coming out. So, ended up going with a Black Splash for both Ritual of Soot and Cast Down. These cards answer some of the more aggressive decks. Ritual of Soot can be pretty good against Golgari. Only really hits your Enigma Drakes in the list. Beyond that, very similar to what's normally going on. Got your Dive Downs, your Ops, your Spell Pierces, Charter Courses, Discovery Dispersal. With the Black Splash, we can actually cast the Dispersal half, deal with things like Carnage Tyrant or Niv-Mizzet with relative ease, at least temporarily. Things like Treasure Map also helps accelerate out your Niv-Mizzets more quickly, get you into your mid-game a little bit faster, being able to protect your Niv-Mizzet with Dive Downs, which is kind of your end game, game 1 against some of the more mid-range and controlling decks. And then you obviously have Crackling Drake and Enigma Drake to close out the game. Sideboard, Disdainful Stroke, Negate are pretty much for the mid-range and controlling decks. Disdainful Stroke comes in against Golgari, the various control decks. I guess it's now Sultai more than Golgari now. Moment of Craving is against the more aggressive decks, the Mono Reds, the Mono White decks. Fiery Cannonade comes in against the similar decks that have a lot of low-to-the-ground creatures. Vraska's Contempt and Nullus Reborn give you pretty clean answers to Planeswalkers, which is another thing that the straight blue-red version of the deck is missing, and then another Niv-Mizzet and Treasure Map to pair against the more mid-range and controlling decks when you need a little bit more card advantage. The first 3 matches were recorded before the SCG Open in, can't remember, Indianapolis, I believe. And the next several matches, however many there are till the league is done, are being recorded after, so we may actually see some different deck archetypes than were popping up before. This hand's a pretty easy mulligan. We only have 1 land, so this hand's also likewise an easy mulligan, so we're going to 5 right off the bat. Alright, I mean, for a 5-card hand, this is okay, I guess. Enigma Drake. Guess we top it. This hand's missing a lot of stuff. On a positive note, our opponent went to 6 cards, so we're still basically down 2 cards in what's looking to either be a control matchup or against Mono Blue or Drakes. Could still be any of the above decks with Opt here. Definitely looking like Mono Blue here, hopefully with an untapped land. Alright, Lava Coil will do here in this spot. Don't wanna let our opponent untap with creatures if at all possible. The Warkite Marauder, sure. So if we ever get to the point where we're casting Niv-Mizzet, we're doing good this game, but looks like we're just going to have to jam our blockers and hope they stick around. This Warkite Marauder is going to make it kind of rough this game. Let's go ahead and concede. We're too far behind. We started out. Don't really want to show our opponent any more of our deck anyway. So, definitely want the Moment of Cravings. Cannonades don't actually kill a lot of the stuff out of the Mono Blue deck. Niv's probably fine. You don't tend to have a lot of cards we care about with Dive Down. Ritual of Soot's fine against them. So the question is, what becomes the cuts? Maybe it's just leave it as is, pretty much. Bring in the Moment of Craving, shave like a dive down, since they don't tend to have a lot of non-counterspell interaction for creatures anyway. Like, they have Warkite Marauder and potentially the 3-mana Mana War. I can't remember what the exact name is. Used to play the deck a lot too, and you think I'd remember what the name of the specific card is that bounces creatures back to your hand. Which can definitely be a blowout against Drakes, so want to be a little bit more on the removal spell plane if we can remove them step for step, especially being on the play here. Seems fine. It's not like amazing, but we got like cast down onto Drake on 3 potentially. Opponent didn't see the black splash out of us, so they're not quite sure what we're up to probably. And the question becomes, do I hold up cast down or do I just cast Discovery Dispersal? I think I just cast Discovery Dispersal here. Our opponent sides, I was going to say, are we getting Spell Pierced here? That would kind of suck. Another land and another Drake. How interested am I in another red source right now? I don't think I'm that interested right now. Could come back to bite us a little bit. I think I'm interested in both of these, though. Might get Merfolk Trickstered on instep here. Nope, just an op, sure. Feels like they're holding up Essence Scatter here. May very well get a counterspell out of them. So if they continue to do nothing, we'll gain some amount of whatever here. Yep, unsurprisingly here. Probably interested in a dive down of our own. Hopefully they don't have a counterspell too, but they probably do. Wow, no counterspell. Okay. Doesn't really have any profitable attacks now, unless they have Exclusion Mages it. Of course they do. Hopefully this is stabilized. Okay. Doing this during our opponent's upkeep to tie up their mana a little bit if they have a dive down or a counter spell here. Apparently they just have nothing. Doing that to keep their Curious Obsession alive. That was obnoxious. So our opponent can now puts us in kind of a tough spot since they get to draw 2 cards. We will draw Niv Mizzet. Drawing a glut of lands at the wrong time. That's moderately annoying. See if our opponent has any tricks here. Yep, just a Tempest Mage. So I could try to discovery for something here, or I can... The odds that our opponent has a counterspell are pretty decent, so I guess we just go with Enigma Drake first. Discovery. No attacks. Sure. So the odds our opponent has another Merfolk Trickster here. Looks like the answer is they don't. Game was a little too close for comfort. Question is, do I change how I sideboard against them on the draw? Spell Pierce isn't great. It does hit some of their counter spells early on. It misses, obviously, is kind of the be-all, end-all for their creatures. I think it's about where we want to be. Eldest Reborn and Contempt just seem a little too slow. Kept a hand of 7. We need to mulligan this hand. Looking for lands. And of course they have a Miscloak on 1 this game. Do they have... Yep, of course they have the Curious Obsession start. Awkward. Frustrating part when you can't punish them for their 1 land greedy keep. Really don't want to get into an instant speed battle with Mono Blue. Especially when they're so far up on cards. Trickster, of course. So annoying. And we're dead. Alright. Well, 2-2, not exactly the most resounding league with the deck, I suppose. But thoughts on the deck so far? Splash seems reasonable. I mean, it's really kind of hard to gauge off of only 4 matches so far. With this particular build, we'll definitely be testing it more. Mono Blue can be a bit rough for any removal heavy deck, regardless of its sorcery speed or not. This is the one matchup where probably Shock's probably better than Moment of Craving per se, just from a mana efficiency standpoint against their instant speed stuff. I mean, that mulligan to 5 game 1 really kind of did us in. Some of my play patterns there in game 3 certainly hurt as well. Some of the other matchups we placed against, it was nice to get a win against Golgari. The Gruul matchup seemed a little bit rough. I don't know. It's definitely a deck that warrants more testing. Obviously, the Izzet Drakes decks that did well this weekend had... Let's see if I can pull them up here. Star City's actually updated their deck lists yet. So, top 8. Sultai midrange, Bant midrange. Izzet Drake's list that Bradley Carpenter played was 4 Terramander, along with the creature things. It's not even playing Arclight things, which I find interesting. And then has the Niv Mizzet treasure map thing in the sideboard. Rest of the 4 mat, Sultai midrange, which is basically looks like the new version that Golgari is going to end up going with Hydroid Colossus and some blue counterspells out of the thing, which makes sense given the fact that some of the more controlling decks are going to be a bit of a problem moving forward. Bant mid-range, so Angel of Grace, Frilled Mystic, Growth Chamber Guardian. So basically a little bit of flash with some other elements to it. Angel of Grace and Frilled Mystic with flash, and then Growth Chamber Guardian is a solid defensive 2-drop along with a Shalai. I'm honestly surprised this isn't running a copy or two of the 4-drop that gives all of the historic cards. Flash looked like it could go well with History of Benalia and such, but that definitely could fix some of the aggro deck issues again for the Flash deck. And then Azorius Aggro. So it looks like Legion's Landing. I'm surprised it's not riding Dovenbon. Feels like Dovenbon would be the kind of card I would want. So it looks like the tactic for at least the release weekend here was to go this is the Hero of Precinct 1 build around deck where everything's basically a gold card other than Lyra against the mono red decks. Give you an out to mono red in the main deck. And then mono red's highest finish was 13th. Doesn't look like any of the Nexus of Fate decks did really well here. Looks like it was just more traditional, like Control and such. On Chromium for Teferi. You know, taking advantage of the better mana plus Absorb, Moment of Craving. So heavily leaning towards control. The red decks here with the moment of Cravings, the Absorbs, Vraska's Contempts. So certainly a lot going on in Standard here. Grixis Control, be interesting. It took 3 Crackling Drake, 3 Niv Izzet. So Aldous Reborn, Bedevil, Chemist's Insight, Expansion. So this might end up being like the direction we want to take the Rakdos Drakes deck I was just playing. This deck goes a little bit bigger while still maintaining Crackling Drake and Niv Mizzet here. Ral's probably fine. I'd probably want some amount of treasure maps. Maybe Search for Oscanthus fine in this build. I don't know. This is a little bit of a bigger version with Bedevil and Eldest Reborn in the main deck. I would think you would want more copies of Moment of Craving for the red decks. But I suppose this build could be pretty reasonable. Might be the next one we try out online here, considering we have all these cards already. Other than I think Bedevil would be the only one I need to get here. Don't know about the sideboard. Sideboard seems a little bit thrown together like one of Legion War Boss. Thief of Sanity makes more sense in a build where you're kind of playing with less threats in the main deck. But definitely a very interesting meta. A lot of people were worried about the Nexus of Fate decks. So it looks like these... It almost looks like these blue splashes were designed to combat that and Control. So Control is going to be kind of in a rough place. I mean, it certainly did okay on the first weekend, but it looks like a lot of these mid-range decks are adapting by... And even some of the aggro decks, like this Azorius aggro decks, basically mono white splashing blue counter spells. And then Bant, Azorius, Teamer Climb. So a lot of... Yep, like I think that's the first Nexus deck we've actually seen. Nexus of Gates. So Marshall Arthur's is a local grinder from this area. It's probably Golgari splashing for some counterspells. Yep, Unmoored Ego, Disdainful Stroke. So it looks like a lot of people at least early on, recognized that the Nexus of Fate decks were a threat and came prepared. So looks like everybody was kind of ready for Mono Red and Nexus of Fate this weekend, so everybody's kind of starting to learn their lessons about release weekends. So format's shaping up to be pretty sweet. There's a lot of new decks, a lot of new takes on old decks like Golgari getting the blue splash and some other stuff. So format looks sweet. Moving on. Granted, Standard's not what we usually cover here on the channel. We usually do a lot of Modern, but I'm going to be doing some, at least try to do one video of Standard a day, and then start getting up to like 2 Modern videos a day. We'll do one Burn release, one other video, and then some type of Arena content. Probably space out the Arena content in the morning, do the other Modern stuff mid-afternoon, and then do the Burn release later in the evening like we've been doing. So that's kind of the goal for the channel here as far as content. I don't know how regularly I'm going to be able to meet that particular lofty requirement, but we're definitely going to be getting the Burn videos out every night as much as possible at 7 o'clock. So thanks for tuning in. This has been Dust for Dustin on Gaming. Don't forget to like, comment, and subscribe.